Superintendent Flint. We appreciate your presence and involvement in our school district. Our meetings are a time for the Board of Education superintendent, selected staff to conduct the order of business of the school district in a transparent public format. To ensure our meetings go smoothly, professionally, and efficiently, we ask that everyone maintain an appropriate level of decorum at all times. At this time, please silence your cell phones and other communication devices. If everyone will stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, our agenda is approved. At this time, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Flint.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, board members and all of our guests. Thank you for being here. I also like to say a special thank you to, I know we had to adjust these meetings pretty tightly to be able to get them all in. Obviously, there's some requirements on timelines here and then publishing the dates. And so if there's a need to do that, we had to get this one in a little bit earlier than the regular meeting next week. So definitely appreciate everybody doing that. Today we do have a tax digest millage rate presentation for you. I'm going to ask Mr. Casado to come forward to provide that, and then we'll open it up for some discussion with board members so we can have a discussion on where you want to go next. So at this time I'll ask Mr. Casado to come forward. And Mr. Casado, thank you for your work on this and your staff. Good job.
Good evening. Prepared to discuss this year's millage rate that will fund that FY 2027 budget that you passed last month. We recently received a digest, and tonight are asking you to tentatively adopt a millage rate this evening so that we know how to move forward toward final adoption. As a reminder, here is the final adopted budget for FY 27. It includes a 3% increase in property tax revenue, which was simply just a conservative estimate as we waited for the actual digest information to come in. This budget estimates an ending fund balance at June 30 of 2027 of right under $83.9 million, which is approximately a 20% fund balance as a percentage of total estimated expenditures. It's always important to review who does what during this time. I know it can kind of be confusing. There's a lot of moving parts. Simply, the tax assessor is the one who assesses the fair market value of properties in the county. The tax commissioner uses that data from the assessor and all the exemption data and what's been filed and approved by them to compile the digest. And then they also collect and remit property taxes to the governmental entities. And then you, the Columbia County Board of Education, set a millage rate that funds the adopted budget. That's what we're here doing tentatively tonight. Reminder of some recent laws, one that impacts this digest and the other that impacts next year's. But as a reminder, you, the Board of Education, did House Bill 783 back in 2025, which increased the local homestead exemption to $8,000. We didn't have one. We put on $8,000 in conjunction with the $2,000 that was already established by the state. That is in this digest for this year, so these numbers already consider that. Senate Bill 33 passed this last legislative session, and it caps the increase in taxable homestead value at the rate of inflation. Very, very similar to what House Bill 581 did and all those decisions we had to make then. This bill implements that and does not have an opt-out clause in it. And so some guidance has come out since that law passed. 2026, so this year, will be the base year for that. And then the exemption will begin starting with the 2027 digest. So nothing impacting this digest currently as it relates to Senate Bill 33. This slide explains the calculation used to arrive at the gross digest. the value of a mill, and the total property tax revenue before the tax commissioner takes their fee or their percentage. This exact same calculation can be done for each individual property owner in the county using your fair market, 40% of your fair market value that you got on your assessment in the mail last week, I believe. Tax implications are unique to each property in the county based on reassessments and exemptions, so keep that in mind. And I go through the math here. I don't want to necessarily spell it out for you, but I think it's important to show the math in a way that is understandable. 9.2 million, that figure there is what 1 mill is worth now in Columbia County. And you multiply that, I've used the rollback rate of 14.997, which we'll see in a minute. And that gets you that 138 million figure on the 5-year history, which we will also review momentarily. This is the PT 32.1, which is used to calculate the rollback rate each year. I don't do this document. This comes from the tax commissioner's office. They're the professionals who know how to do this very well. The rollback rate is calculated based on the reassessment of existing real property. It determines the millage rate the board would have to set to levy roughly the same property tax revenue as last year on property that existed in the digest last year. Okay, so it's a calculation that seeks to accomplish that. As you can see, the rollback rate has been calculated as 14.997 mils, which is an 8.25% change from the current millage rate of 16.234. This is a familiar slide as well. It's a legally required one that gets advertised, and it shows the history of the digest and millage rate for the year in question, and then the preceding 5 years. Near the bottom, you'll see the total taxes levied each year, as well as the net tax increase, percent change from the prior year, but this time it's percent change of total estimated revenue, not percent change of millage rate, so those numbers can be slightly different. At the rollback rate of 14.997 mils, the district would receive approximately 0.22%, or roughly $305,000 before the tax commissioner's fee, more in property tax revenue than the year before, and that's due to growth in the digest. This is probably the easiest way to explain that. I've updated this chart for this year and actually expanded it. It shows the breakdown of each state and local property tax exemption, along with the total amount exempted across the county for each. This year I added the comparison between last year and this year, assuming the same millage rate. So this is calculated using 16.234 for comparison purposes. The far right column calculates the difference in each exemption to show the change. At the bottom, you can see the monetary impact of these exemptions on property tax revenue at just below 33.3 million. So that's how much property tax revenue is being reduced by all the exemptions on the digest. The vast majority of this growth came from the 70 and older school tax exemption. That total of that exemption continues to exceed every other exemption combined. And we've spoken about this, had presentations about this exemption, and have tried to project it out into the future, and have said, you know, this is probably going to increase as the population of Columbia County continues to increase. This is a draft of the notice of property tax increase from the tax commissioner's office that will be advertised in some form if the rollback rate is not tentatively adopted tonight. The current millage rate was used as a placeholder, but it, again, will be updated based upon what you all decide to move forward with, or it won't be necessary at all if the rollback rate is tentatively adopted. We won't have to put this in the paper because by law, it wouldn't be a property tax increase. As a note, in this ad, the average home in Columbia County has a fair market value of $250,000. So I'd like to let people know kind of the impact of what implementing the whole rollback rate would do to that average homeowner. You could extrapolate this across homes of all different values. But adopting the rollback rate will save the average homeowner $123.70 per year, or $10.31 per month. Again, that assumes the same value of their home though, right? So again, it's independent based on each property and how much it was reassessed this year. In comparison, the chart before you shows the impact on revenue starting with the current millage rate and ending with the rollback rate. The column to the far right shows the difference in revenue above or below what was budgeted for each millage rate. This number also represents the impact on budgeted ending fund balance. I've highlighted the millage rate of 15.524, which produces slightly more than the amount budgeted for ad valorem revenue. So that would be the millage rate to fund that 3% or so increase that was put into the budget during that time. Here's a history of the school district's millage rate since 1989. Boards lowered the millage rate just above 2 mills over the course of the last 5 years, which is good news. As a reminder, the current rate of 16.234 is the lowest total millage rate since 1989, and that rollback rate of 14.997 would also be the lowest maintenance and operations millage rate since 1996. Back then, we levied a bond millage rate to pay back debt service for the building program at that time. But if you look just at M&O, it would be the lowest since 96. So there are 2 different processes depending on the tentative millage rate adopted tonight. The first on the left is if you choose to tentatively adopt the rollback rate, all we have to do is advertise the 5-year history of levy that I showed you in the newspaper and on our website, and then at a subsequent meeting adopt finally the rollback rate, or lower. You could still go lower if you chose to do so. If tonight you choose to tentatively adopt any millage rate higher than the rollback rate, we have to advertise the 5-year history of levy and that notice of property tax increase, which will be updated accordingly, conduct 3 public hearings with opportunity for input, and adopt a millage rate at or below what was advertised at that point. So in either scenario, when you come to do your final adoption, you can always adopt something lower than what you advertise or tentatively adopted, which is important to note. And that's all I have. At this time, we're asking for the board to tentatively adopt a millage rate so that I know how to move the process forward, which way I need to go. I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, for discussion and questions.
Thank you very much. Don't go far. If you could go back to your slide with the 3
millage rates?
Yeah, 3 millage rates. Just hold that up there. Fellow board members, tonight we need to discuss whether or not we wish to adopt the full rollback rate or something else. My view on it is I would like to go through the hearings to hear more about basically the difference in the second and the third options. In my view, we've adopted a budget and with anticipated, assuming a 3% revenue growth in local funds, correct?
Correct.
And so, Mr. Casado has done the math, and in the middle line, the 15.524 rollback rate would generate, in essence, the amount of local revenue needed to fund our budget without eating into our reserves any further. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the question is, in my view, whether we adopt a rollback rate at that amount, or do we decide as a board that we want to adopt a full rollback rate, anticipating that it will reduce our reserves from by $4.7 million.
Correct.
And so I just want to open the floor for discussion. I know we don't have a motion on the floor, but I'd like to hear people's thoughts on it and then try to arrive at a consensus.
I make a motion to tentatively adopt the full rollback millage rate of 14.997.
I'll say that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. We can discuss it fully.
So I'll open up the discussion since I made the motion. So just to clarify that I'm understanding Mr. Casado correctly, in the local revenue category, 139.8 million of that category on the budget. I don't know if it would be helpful to show the budget, but under our final budget for FY27, it shows local sources at 159.8 million. And so just to clarify, the portion of that we're discussing with this decision affected by the millage rate is 139.8 million, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's clarified. That number was built to include a 3% increase. So that number was built into the budget, not assuming a full rollback would be done, correct? Because a full rollback would have been a 0% increase, the same number as last year.
It depends. You could theoretically adopt a full rollback rate and still have a 3% increase in your digest because of growth in the county for that digest year. You see in the 5-year history, we adopted the full rollback rate last year, still brought in about 2% more in revenue because of the relationship between new property and exemptions, not canceling each other out, kind of the way it does this year.
So it was built with a 3% increase, which brings us to that $139.8 million category. If we adopt the full rollback, that brings us back to approximately $138 million of revenue minus the 2% fee, which is $2.7 million, correct? And that would bring us to a revenue loss of about $4.5 million between what we budgeted and what we would anticipate collecting based on that digest growth. Right, so we're talking about a $4.5 million difference if we do full rollback.
Correct. Yes.
That's the point I'm trying to.
$4.7 million.
About a point. Okay. So just to kind of put those numbers for clarity, to do a full rollback would generate us approximately $4.7 million less revenue than this budget shows, which assumes a number of roughly 140 million.
Yes.
So my question to this board is why, given that we did a $20 million transfer from the general fund to the building fund when 3 members approved this budget, why would we not want to do a full rollback when it's only a difference of $4.5 million? Why would we want to take or even entertain the possibility of taking more taxes from people when we already essentially had a $20 million surplus that we decided to use elsewhere out of the general fund?
Well, those are questions that I would love to hear discussed in our public hearings and to get some public input. I would like to know, and I don't want to put you on the spot tonight, but as I said before, the difference between the rollback rate of 15.554 and full rollback rate would be about $4.7 million into our reserves, and it would be helpful to me to know, can we cushion that?
Where does that leave our reserves, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I did a rough calculation of that. When you're looking at reserves, it's as a proportion of the subsequent years, the next year's expenditures. So just assuming next year's budget increases $10 million or so, I have at the rollback rate approximately a 19% fund balance. So if you were to roll this all the way back with those assumptions in mind, you would be around 19% fund balance.
Are you
With these numbers.
Are you comfortable with 19%?
Refresh us on what the fund balance does. What does it pay for? Why do we have it?
Yeah, fund balance is essentially your savings account in personal finance, so it's your rainy day fund. It helps get you through the time that usually for from about this time of year until November, December, when property tax revenue comes in. Most of our property tax revenue comes in just 2 months. And so your fund balance all throughout the year kind of does this, with a huge spike around that time, and then you're spending it down, and then it spikes back up the next year. So you have to have enough fund balance to pay your bills, for the most part, between now and then. Now, you are getting state revenue, but state revenue doesn't cover all of it, of course. So that's the primary reason. You also keep fund balance in case of economic downturn, often, resulting in less furlough days or less having to raise class sizes, things of that nature. And so it's a delicate balance, certainly. But to answer your question, around 20%, as we said in the budget, 20% is a healthy fund balance for a school district.
What's the low end something would be uncomfortable with?
Your policy says we cannot go below 15.
Is there something higher than 15 that you, in other words, if it's 17, are you comfortable?
We've been,
Because it says that in policy.
we've been historically, if you kind of look back around in the teens before, 17, 18%, and we're able to make it, right, until the property tax revenue comes in. So I would say, of course, no lower than 15. That's when you start to have real conversations about what to do.
If we adopted the tentative rollback rate of 15.554, then the advertisement would be changed, correct?
Correct.
That number, have you undertaken to calculate what the average $250,000 house with the increase would be?
I have not, but it would be something probably a little bit higher than what it was on that slide. I think it was 120 something bucks a year.
Could be lower.
If you do a millage rate of if you do a millage rate, it's safe. You're right. You're correct. It would save them less than that. So probably slightly less than
About half.
If I'd have to put pen to paper, but probably around $100 or maybe slightly less. Yeah.
Well, 16.234 down to 15.54 is that's like 7 cents.
Is there,
We can cut it in half.
Approximately, yes.
Is there any reason to think that if we went to the complete rollback, that we'd have to do a sharp increase next year?
It's hard to say. It's hard. The economic winds could change, and we're having that conversation. I can't really answer it.
I get that.
But no, like all things held constant, right? Held the same, not wildly fluctuating. I believe we're fine for this year.
So 3 points to jump in here. One, we had a full rollback last year, and given the tax digest growth, we still collected an extra $2.7 million in revenue, correct?
We did.
Okay. So that's something to think about. 2, when this board tentatively does something, it generally follows through on that. So we came here knowing that we had the opportunity to do a full rollback, and we came here prepared with the information. Mr. Casado has the numbers we need. I would say I'm prepared with all the information and numbers I need to do the full rollback. I'm not sure any citizens are going to be standing up here based on past speaking events and say, hey, I don't think we should do the full rollback. I think they're generally amenable to that, and that's what they want. So I don't see that changing in the next few hearings. So to have budget hearings not to then turn around and do a full rollback, I just don't see that happening based on this board, how it's worked in the past. 3, a month ago, this board approved a budget with a $42 million deficit. So I find it a bit ironic that 4 weeks later, a month later, we come back and say, man, we're really worried about our fund balance. We need to not do a full rollback because we need that $4.5 million or $4.7 million in our fund balance. I think the right thing to do by taxpayers so that we're not double dipping, as Mr. Kent had spoken to last meeting, where we transfer money from general fund to SPLOST to supplement eSPLOST dollars and then turn around and at tax and millage time and say, man, we just need money, we're not comfortable. That's double dipping to transfer 20 million out of general fund and then turn around and say we can't do the full rollback. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So again, I stand on, we have everything we need to do the tentative full rollback tonight, and I think not doing so would be doing wrong by taxpayers and double taxing them.
Is that double taxing and double dipping, Mr. Kozlowski?
Often, school districts, you put excess reserves into their building program because they can't.
The reality is, though, is that it's $20 million that was raised from property tax that we're transferring towards the building fund. It's also funded by SPLOST. So, in fact, it can be looked at in a very good way that it is double dipping. I know we don't want to say that, and you don't want to say that. So, asking you to say that is not something that I want you to do. But if you literally look at it, that is what it is. And so, I feel very comfortable with a full rollback. I think that when you take those property funds to that amount, I think you can afford to do this.
I think it's interesting, given that nobody really knows what most of us do think about the rollback. All the accusations are being made, and I don't know that we really need to discuss double dipping, since all the money comes from the taxpayers, and I don't think we really have time to count how many times we dip into those pockets. It really has nothing to do with the discussion we're having tonight about the millage rate. So if we're ready to discuss the millage rate, let's just do it.
Well, the question would be, does the majority of this board at this time, at this night, want to proceed with adopting the full rollback rate, or do we want to enter hearings, receive more information before we adopt the final millage rate, which could be the full rollback rate after we receive more information and receive public input?
Chairman,
I don't have a problem with that.
what
A
information?
motion for that?
No, we have a motion on the floor to adopt the full rollback rate. Once we vote on that, if it's approved, the full rollback rate will be adopted. If that motion fails, then we will need a motion to adopt a tentative rollback rate and proceed with the hearing.
Not a call question.
Call the question. All in favor of adopting the full rollback rate tonight, raise your hand. You're going to adopt the full rollback rate? Yep. All right. All opposed, raise your hand. All right. The full rollback rate is adopted. 14.4. So we will 14.997. So we will not have any further hearings. Congratulations. Yeah, we need a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion to return to executive session, South Park legal and real estate.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. All right. Please leave.
Make a motion, that the chairman be ready to execute an affidavit in accordance with the state law affirming that no subject to discuss during the executive session violated the open meeting law of the state of Georgia.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. All right, that's unanimous and approved. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I need to make a statement, and we need to take care of some very important business. At our June 16 meeting, our Chief Facility Officer, Mr. Beatty, brought the district's recommendation to the board for the selection of construction manager at risk to build the additions and improvements at Greenbrier High School as set out in our 10-year building plan. As you may recall, he explained from the five excellent general contractors that submitted bids, Carroll Daniel Construction received the highest scoring. Based on the recommendation and after discussion and debate, the board voted to award the CMAR to Carroll Daniel Construction, who is currently the CMAR construction manager at risk, for both Lakeside and Harlem High Schools. After the award, one of the contractors contacted our board attorneys lodging an objection to the manner in which the scores were calculated. Our superintendent and our attorneys investigated the matter and have determined that in fact the scoring calculation performed by our outside program manager, Turner Townsend, was not correctly calculated. It's my understanding that the program manager used a different method of calculating the scores from that which was used for the Harlem High CMAR bid award. Had the program manager utilized the same method of calculating the scores, Carol Daniel would not have received the highest score. It is further my understanding that had district staff and superintendent received correct scoring calculation from our program manager, they would have recommended that the CMAR be awarded to the contractor which did receive the highest scoring. Therefore, to uphold the integrity of the process and to correct this error, I believe it is incumbent upon this board, either tonight or at our next regular meeting, to rescind the bid award to Carol Daniel, to hear from our staff a full explanation of the mistake, and to award the CMAR to the contractor who would have received the highest scoring but for the mistake, and that contractor was McKnight Construction. I want to apologize to both contractors for any harm or inconvenience that this has caused, but we must do what is fair and right in the circumstances. All those who seek to do business with Columbia County School District should expect a fair process free from error, and that is the expectation of the Board of Education and the citizens of Columbia County. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, we did not amend the agenda to include this item.
I'm trying to make a motion now to amend the agenda,
To include this
to
item.
include the discussion of this item, yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of a motion to amend the agenda to address this item, please raise your right hand. All opposed? That's 4-1. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to rescind the bid award to Carol Daniel and award the CMAR bid for Harlem High School to McKnight Construction.
Second.
No, say so.
So moved.
What did I say? All right, Greenbrier, correct that.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Discussion, is there a discussion on the motion to amend the agenda?
We've already voted on that.
Right, but that's a point of order. Was there supposed to be discussion on amending the agenda to discuss this tonight?
No one asked for discussion.
I'm asking for discussion right now. I want to explain that
Point of order, we've already passed that motion and we're down the road. There's another motion on the floor. And at this time, we do need to hear from the administration regarding what the correct recommendation would have been had they received.
we're bound by Robert's rules. Chairman Deagle, you're bound by Robert's rules, and if there needs to be discussion, it needs to be done correctly. So we need to, before we move forward incorrectly procedurally, we need to go back and discuss the motion to amend the agenda to even be allowed to make a statement or discussion or move forward on this.
Fletcher, are we in order?
Question. You do have a majority vote. If you can rediscuss it if you'd like and revote it for the new motion, but I don't have our rules with me to look at that very specific question on the motion to amend the agenda and the discussion involved on that.
Can we pause and check our Robert's rules books to see if the motion to amend the agenda deserves a discussion before we move forward improperly?
Might I ask why you didn't discuss it then?
I voted no on amending the agenda, and I'd like the opportunity for us to discuss the pros and cons of discussing it at this meeting versus next meeting.
Well, the pro that I can think of is that once the board has voted, we're bound by ethics to support the opinion of the majority of the board.
I agree with that, Ms. Teasley, and ethically, we're equally bound to follow the procedures of Robert's rules, including the discussions before the vote. So I just want to make sure we're doing it properly, especially as we're fixing an error that is very profound, and I want to make sure that we're doing it right every step of the way. So if it turns out that there is no discussion, then we can move forward now to the next motion.
Timing will help as well.
But technically, there's nowhere on this agenda to even document Chairman Deeple's statement, because we went from executive session to adjourning. There's no items, there's no, so how will we even document this if we haven't formally amended it, and there was already a statement and discussion that preceded the official item, which should begin the discussion. So I know it seems technical, but at the same time, these are the things that keep us from making these errors as we
Okay,
move
let's,
forward.
I'm sorry, are you finished? Okay. According to this, under Robert's Rules of Order, a motion to amend the agenda is debatable, but the debate is strictly limited to the proposed changes to the agenda rather than the substance of the items being moved or added. So, if you will remake your motion.
I would like to amend the agenda to discuss the issue of the awarding of the contract for Greenbrier High School. That's a contract with CMAR, yes. Second.
All right, anyone who would like to debate that, please limit your discussion to the proposed changes to the agenda rather than the substance of the items being moved or added.
So I think there is a lot of merit to contacting the companies. It's my understanding the companies themselves have not been contacted. This is really kind of the first time some of us board members are hearing this information and the results of this looking into. I think having a week, we have a meeting next week where we can take this action, we can inform the proper parties that we're looking at this action, but that would allow a little bit more time for us to notify the proper parties, make sure that what we're doing that's actionable tonight is properly actioned, and that we're not rushing into something and potentially making another mistake, because that's the last thing I want. So I want to do this next week. We can have it on the agenda instead of putting it on tonight where there was no notice to even all us board members that this would be something that we would be discussing tonight. What is the merit of doing it tonight versus waiting a week?
We have a call for the question. So at this time, all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All opposed? All right. The motion to amend the agenda is passed. At this time, I'll entertain the motion to rescind the bid award made to Carroll Daniel Construction for Greenbrier High School and to award it to Ignite Construction, who got the highest scoring for the bid.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
So just to clarify, what was the particular error between Harlan High School and Greenbrier High School that brought us here tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. As we did at the last meeting, I'd like to call on our Chief Facilities Officer, Mr. Beatty, to come forward and give us some of those specifics. And Mr. Beatty, thank you for joining us tonight and all you do.
Just to rehash all that transpired, after we got the recommendation from the construction management firm and presented that, and it's due diligent on their part and what we required them to do, they went back and looked. And on the weekend, 28th, they contacted me and said that they had made a math there. Put it down. You talk about dealing with decimal points, it's pretty easy to do. We talked about it on Sunday evening, and then on Monday, we talked about it again. At that time, I instructed them to go back and do this, go through all the math, check all of the formula, make sure that it's all right, and the same formula that we did at Harlan, which is standard for moving forward. At that particular time, we met again on Tuesday morning. At that time, I informed Dr. Flint for the first time that there was an issue. The construction management firm was there. We discussed what was going on, what the possibilities were, how we should address this. It's first time that this has happened. It's not the first time that it's happened in the construction business. You know, this is just one of those things. You hate it that it's in your own backyard, but inevitably it's relatively simple fix. And, you know, is to go back and do the right thing, do all the calculations, make sure that they're right, and award it to the contractor who earned it outright. You know, in this particular case, it was McNaught, you know, and I do agree with Ms. Allen that, you know, we contacted the other, you know, because I know that there's still some waiting. I have received phone calls waiting to see tonight how this was going to go, and if we were actually going to do it tonight or at the next board meeting, but they do need to be notified, and they will be by the construction management firm as what's taking place and you know, where the responsibility lies. You know, at the end of the day, it was just strictly an error. You know, I mean, it was called, and you know, the checks and balances part of it, you know, paying itself out. It, you know, you can't say a whole lot more other than, you know, I think it's kind of an embarrassment more on the construction management firm, you know, because we hired them and paid them to get something to do this, but for them to come forward and not, you know, not try to do anything, but to do the right thing for us, you know, so that's kind of, you know.
Had you been given accurate calculations in June when you came to June 16th meeting, and those calculations showed that Mason Ionic Construction had received the highest scoring? Would that have been your recommendation to us to award the bid?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it's all about getting the best dollar value. In this particular case, it is the best dollar value. You know, I mean, it's all based on the GMP that we have said, or estimated at $82 million, which was presented when all of this process started. But their percentages for what they did and how they were evaluated, you know, that portion of it where the error was made is just part of the process. The biggest part of it is when the team does the interview with each individual company, you know, and they're all outstanding companies, and you know, I stressed that before. And by the time you put it all together, all the points are added, you know, everything's done. You know, simply there was an error, but yes, sir, that would happen. That would have been a recommendation from the construction management firm, and that's how we would have presented it.
Is there something that could have been done to sort of see this before we did 30? Is there something, additional oversight, something Mr. Beatty made that you could have done or someone else could have done to see the tabulation and then prevent sort of a public embarrassment before that accounting firm? And I think you played it down just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty big error, a pretty big problem, so, you know, it's significant. But that's my question, is there anything that we could have done in oversight to prevent it to get to the table, to get to the floor?
Now, we kind of, you know, you could have checked it 4 or 5 times, you know, had another check to look at it, you know, but it's their responsibility to bring that to us and present that, you know, and we just take the numbers for what they are, for what they provide. I don't actually see the complete package till a later date, you know, and sometimes, in this particular case, we just got the total package, and we've seen the numbers that I gave to Dr. Flint, you know, prior to when we made the recommendations. So, that, you know, that's our first time, so no, we really didn't have a chance. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, there's probably a better solution here to go back through those numbers with them, make sure that they are right.
Please let us know what we need to do to change or impact the process in a positive way.
I would like, please, to have the scoring matrices with these calculations and numbers for all 4 projects, Harlem High School, Greenbrier, Evans, and Lakeside, sent to me directly this week, because I would like to kind of look over it, please.
Right, so.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your time this evening. I'll entertain all in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.